At 79, Sally Field has reached a stage in life where reflection feels more honest than performance. For decades, audiences saw her as cheerful, strong, and dependable, whether she was playing a light television role or delivering a powerful dramatic performance on the big screen. But behind the awards and applause was a woman who spent much of her life trying to understand love, safety, and emotional connection. When she recently spoke about a man who truly fulfilled her in a way no one else did, many people were surprised. Her words were not loud or scandalous. They were thoughtful and calm. She spoke about emotional satisfaction, about feeling seen, and about being understood without having to beg for attention. To understand why this admission matters so much, it helps to look back at her early life. She was born in California in 1946, and from the outside, her childhood seemed normal. But her parents divorced when she was young, and that change shaped her deeply. Divorce in those days was not as common, and it created confusion and emotional tension. Her mother later remarried, and Sally grew up in a home where she often felt pressure to behave well and meet expectations. She loved her mother, but she also felt that love sometimes came with conditions. At home, she learned to be careful with her emotions. She became very aware of other people's moods. She tried to avoid conflict and to keep peace whenever possible. These early lessons followed her into adulthood. As a teenager, she entered Hollywood and quickly became famous. She starred in shows like Gidget, which made her a familiar face across America. Fame came before she fully understood herself. While the world saw confidence, she still felt unsure inside. This gap between public image and private emotion became a pattern in her life. She worked hard, smiled for cameras, and followed expectations, but inside, she often questioned whether she was truly enough. This inner struggle made her long for a relationship where she would feel safe, without pretending. She wanted love that did not require her to perform. She wanted someone who could see past the actress and understand the person. That desire became a quiet theme running through every chapter of her romantic life, shaping her choices and teaching her painful but important lessons along the way. Her first marriage was to Stephen Craig, and it began when she was still very young. At that time, she was just starting to build her career, and the world felt fast and overwhelming. He was not part of the entertainment industry, and that difference felt comforting. He represented stability and normal life. In the late 1960s, marrying young was common, especially for women. It felt like the natural next step. For Sally, marriage offered structure. It felt like something solid she could hold on to while everything else changed quickly around her. Soon, she became a mother to 2 sons, and motherhood became the center of her world. She loved her children deeply and wanted to give them the stability she sometimes felt she lacked. But balancing career and home life was not easy. Even though she was the primary earner, there was still pressure to fit into traditional roles. She tried to be the perfect wife, the present mother, and the hardworking actress all at once. Over time, the differences between her and Stephen grew more clear. She was changing quickly as a person, learning more about herself, taking creative risks, and gaining confidence in her abilities. He was growing too, but in a different direction. There was no dramatic event that ended the marriage. Instead, there was slow emotional distance. Communication became harder. They were both young when they married, and youth sometimes lacks the tools needed to manage deep conflict. By 1975, the marriage ended in divorce. The separation brought sadness and guilt. Divorce still carried social stigma, especially for mothers. She worried about her children and wondered if she had failed. Yet the end of the marriage also marked a turning point. For the first time, she had to stand fully on her own. She began to see that love alone does not fix emotional differences. She realized she had entered marriage searching for safety rather than true partnership. That understanding helped her grow stronger. She started to value her own voice more clearly. She began to ask herself what she truly needed instead of what others expected from her. This growth did not make future relationships easy, but it made them more honest. She was no longer a teenager trying to escape uncertainty. She was a woman learning to define herself beyond roles and labels, Years later, she married again, this time to Alan Gman. This relationship began from a different place. She was older, more experienced, and more aware of her emotional patterns. He worked in film production, so he understood the demands of Hollywood life. That shared understanding created comfort from the start. Their conversations felt equal. There was intellectual respect and creative support. They built a blended family and tried to share responsibilities more evenly. For a while, the marriage seemed balanced. She felt seen not only as a mother or actress, but also as a thinking, feeling partner. Yet even mature love faces challenges. As careers grew busier, stress increased. Long hours and public attention made it difficult to protect private connection. Emotional needs that once felt aligned slowly began to differ. Sally valued open discussion and emotional closeness. Alan processed stress more quietly. These differences were small at first, but grew over time. Again, there was no dramatic explosion, only gradual change. Communication became less smooth. Small misunderstandings stayed unresolved. By the early 1990s, they separated. This divorce felt different from the first. It was not about youth or rushing into adulthood. It was about two grown people recognizing that love does not always guarantee lifelong harmony. She felt grief not only for the relationship but also for the future she had imagined. Still, she learned another important lesson. Relationships can be meaningful even if they end. Not every love story is meant to last forever. Some exist to teach growth, patience, and emotional truth. After this second divorce, she understood herself more clearly than ever. She no longer looked for rescue. She no longer tried to shape herself to fit someone else's comfort. She began to accept that emotional satisfaction requires honesty on both sides. This acceptance prepared her for the relationship that would leave the deepest mark on her heart. When she met Burt Reynolds while filming Smokey and the Bandit, the connection was immediate and intense. Their chemistry was obvious on screen and off. He was bold, charming, and confident. She was thoughtful, sensitive, and emotionally open. Their differences created strong attraction. Being near him made her feel chosen and desired. He admired her depth and sincerity. The public loved them as a couple. They looked glamorous and perfectly matched. But private life was more complex than magazine photos suggested. He was already a major star, used to being in control. She often carried deeper emotional needs and wanted reassurance through conversation. At times, this created imbalance. She wanted to talk through problems. He sometimes avoided heavy discussions. Their love was passionate, but not always stable. Over the years, she later admitted that he hurt her deeply. Yet she also acknowledged that the connection changed her life. It awakened parts of her that felt alive and understood. Even though the relationship ended and they spent years apart, the emotional impact stayed. After his death, she spoke honestly about their time together. She described him as someone who satisfied her emotionally in a way that felt rare and unforgettable. When she used the word satisfied, she did not mean something shallow or temporary. She meant that with him, at least in the beginning, she felt fully awake. She felt desired not just for her fame or talent, but for her inner self. He paid attention to her in a way that made her feel important. For someone who had spent much of her life trying to earn approval, that feeling was powerful. She said that she loved him more than he loved her, and that imbalance eventually caused pain. Still, she never denied the depth of what they shared. Their relationship lasted for several years and included other films together, such as The End and Hooper. Working side by side kept their connection intense. When things were good, they felt unstoppable. They laughed easily, supported each other's work, and seemed to move through life as a team. But when things were difficult, the same intensity made arguments feel larger. His pride and strong personality sometimes clashed with her need for emotional reassurance. Over time, she began to feel that she was shrinking herself to protect his ego. That pattern felt familiar from earlier parts of her life, and it brought back old insecurities she had worked hard to overcome. Eventually, she realized that love without emotional safety could not last. The breakup was painful and left a mark that stayed for decades. They did not remain close afterward, and there were years of silence between them. Yet even with distance, the memory of what they had never fully disappeared. When she reflected on her life later, she did not describe him as perfect. She described him as significant. There is a difference. He represented a time when she felt passion without hesitation. He represented risk, excitement, and vulnerability. That combination created a memory that outlived the relationship itself. In later interviews, she explained that sometimes a love can shape you even if it does not stay. It can teach you what intensity feels like. It can show you parts of yourself that might otherwise stay hidden. For her, he was the one who made her feel fully desired and emotionally charged, even if he could not always meet her deeper needs for stability and tenderness. Now, at 79, when she looks back on her life, her words carry the calm of someone who has nothing left to prove. She has won major awards, including 2 Academy Awards, and built a career respected across generations. She has raised children who built their own paths, including her son Sam Griezmann. Professional success no longer defines her. Instead, she speaks about emotional truth with clarity. When she says that one man satisfied her in a way others did not, she is not comparing worth. She is acknowledging impact. Satisfaction, for her, was about feeling fully alive in another person's presence. It was about emotional electricity and connection that did not require explanation. Yet she also recognizes that satisfaction alone does not create peace. In her later years, she has spoken openly about choosing solitude rather than entering another marriage. She has said she is content being single, focusing on family, friends, and creative projects. That contentment shows growth. In her younger years, she often searched for identity inside relationships. Now she understands that identity must stand on its own. Love can enrich life, but it cannot complete it. Her reflections are not bitter. They are thoughtful. She does not erase the pain of heartbreak, but she also does not regret loving deeply. She understands that every relationship shaped her in some way. The first marriage taught independence. The second taught partnership and limits. The passionate romance taught vulnerability and intensity. Together, these experiences formed a complete picture of emotional growth. At 79, she speaks not as someone chasing headlines, but as someone offering perspective. Her story reminds people that love is rarely simple. It can be joyful and painful at the same time. It can satisfy the heart in one season and challenge it in another. What matters most, she suggests, is learning from each chapter rather than pretending it never happened. In sharing her truth, she gives permission for others to reflect honestly on their own histories of love, satisfaction, and growth. As she continues to reflect on her past, Sally Field often speaks with a kind of gentle honesty that only comes from time and experience. Looking back, she understands that each relationship she entered was connected to the stage of life she was in at that moment. When she was young, she looked for safety. When she was older, she looked for partnership. And when she met Burt Reynolds, she experienced a love that felt thrilling and powerful, even if it was not always steady. She has admitted that she was deeply in love with him, perhaps more deeply than she realized at the time. That level of feeling left a strong emotional mark. In later interviews, she explained that loving someone so intensely can change the way you understand yourself. It reveals both your strength and your weakness. With him, she felt chosen in a way that touched the part of her that once feared not being enough. But she also admitted that she sometimes lost herself in that love. She tried to make things work even when her needs were not fully met. This awareness did not come immediately. It came years later, after distance and reflection. She learned that being satisfied emotionally does not mean ignoring red flags or accepting pain. It means feeling alive and connected while still honoring your own boundaries. Today, she speaks about that chapter without anger. She does not rewrite history to make it perfect, and she does not exaggerate the hurt. Instead, she accepts it as part of her story. That acceptance shows maturity. Many people look back at past love with regret or bitterness. She looks back with understanding. She knows that even relationships that end can carry truth and meaning. The intensity she shared with him taught her about passion, desire, and emotional openness. It also taught her about imbalance and the importance of mutual effort. In sharing these reflections, she gives her audience something deeper than gossip. She offers insight into how love shapes identity. She reminds people that satisfaction is not just physical or temporary. It is about feeling valued, seen, and emotionally engaged. That kind of satisfaction can stay in memory long after the relationship itself fades. In recent years, she has also spoken about the peace she feels living independently. After 2 marriages and a long, public romance, she reached a point where she chose not to remarry. She once explained that she no longer feels the need to search for someone to complete her life. Instead, she feels complete on her own. This decision surprised some fans who grew up watching her romantic story unfold in headlines and films. But for her, it feels natural. She has built a strong bond with her children and grandchildren. She spends time reflecting, writing, and choosing projects that matter to her personally. Fame no longer drives her decisions. Emotional clarity does. When she describes the man who once satisfied her in a way others did not, she does so without longing for the past. She is not wishing to relive it. She is simply honoring its importance. That difference matters. Many people confuse nostalgia with regret. She seems free from both. She understands that love exists in seasons. Some seasons are calm and steady. Others are intense and bright but brief. Each one offers lessons. As she approaches her 8th decade, her story feels less about romance and more about growth. The public may focus on the headline quote, but the deeper message is about self-knowledge. She spent years trying to meet expectations, both in her career and in her personal life. Now she values authenticity more than approval. If she could speak to her younger self, she might say that satisfaction begins within. A partner can awaken certain feelings, but true peace comes from self-respect and honesty. Her journey shows that even successful, admired people struggle with insecurity and longing. Yet growth remains possible at every stage of life. By sharing her truth at 79, she reminds others that it is never too late to understand your past with kindness and clarity.